So again, I'm just so excited to do this with you. Like, Mark, you are such a helpful person in the Slack channels, in Reddit, on Twitter. Like you're clearly very involved with Rome, but that's because it's like transformed the way that you approach your work as a historian and as an instructor as well. Like, and I can really feel that passion coming from you because it's hit you in like this deep ingrained way, like where it's really fit itself into your life. So I'm really excited to just like, I guess, show other people, how it has fit into your life.
Yeah, it has definitely changed things a great deal. As a little bit of context, I had been searching for a kind of networked note-taking tool for years. I had started off with Devon Think, well, technically Evernote years and years and years ago, back in the 2000s,
Hmm.
and it worked and it was okay. But once I really started to get really busy with pedagogy, teaching, writing, thinking a lot more than I had in the past, I needed something a
Hmm.
little bit more robust. And so that's when I went to DevonThink. And DevonThink has had wiki links for years and years. But I'm an iOS first person. So I do most of my work off of my laptop and actually on my iPad. I just like to be out away from a desk or away from a place that I'm like kind of sedentary. And so wiki linking doesn't work in DevonThink to
Mm.
go, which is their iOS application. And it is just note linking, which you can do in almost every program, right? Or every, kind of mature note taking program. And so I moved to Bear, and that worked for a little while, and that was wonderful how it updated the links and everything. That was really cool. But once I discovered Rome, I realized that this was going to be something entirely different. And as we've talked a great deal, and as I talk about on Twitter and everything else, the comment is always, it's just backlinking. What's so special, right? But like you've talked about, and we have talked about, it's not necessarily the backlinking that's all that important, right? That's
Hmm.
just the foundation of everything. And so once I realized the power of the transclusion and queries and all of this other stuff, it totally changed everything.
Hmm.
And I had tried Dynalist for a while, and I really did enjoy that. But I have a lot of offline files and a lot of other things, and I couldn't quite find the mix of a web tool with my local stuff because of all the documents and everything else that I have. And so once I looked at Rome and I was like, okay, it's kind of clunky, right? This was back in October, November, and I didn't really feel like it was going to work because it was too slow. I'm real rapid.
Hmm.
Uh, I
Yeah.
I just can't stand waiting for anything. I just want to get it done and move on. And once I realized that even on the mobile, if you pull it up on Safari on the iPad, that you can put a link to a local file and it just opens it up. Most web tools don't do that. For some
Yeah.
reason, it doesn't recognize the local file link as something to be opened in Safari or your web browser. And so once I realized, I was like, oh, it's over. Okay, here we go. And then I got into the transclusion and everything else, and here we are. So,
And here we are today. Um, so
so
I
let me
guess
go
maybe,
ahead and
yeah.
yeah, let's go ahead and I'll dig in here. I don't know where I left off in the last time I was using this, but okay, here. So can you see my screen and all that good stuff?
Yep.
Okay, so let me align the windows here. Good Zoom trick, right? Align the participants with your webcam so that when you're actually talking to people, you're staring at them instead of something else. I know. Anyway,
Love
okay.
it.
So I suppose there's really three ways that I use Roam, right? It is my knowledge management, of course, but it's also my daily access to my brain and everything that I need to do, as well as teaching, as well as and thinking and writing, right? So there's these kind of three realms that I deal with, and so this is my daily notes page. And as I've been conversating with people on Slack, since I'm mobile first, I don't really like to input much stuff on the laptop. And so I actually have an iOS shortcut that does all this for me. Now it's much more expansive than this. Let me expand it all. So I have, my journal here, which I didn't fill out today for obvious reasons, or yesterday. I have like an evening reflection. So basically I have a query here which pulls the prior day's reflection from the evening. So I can kind of look at that as I'm going through. I have a new version that's actually, that I haven't implemented yet. I just did it today, which pulls a picture from sometime in the random past off my camera roll and drops it in there so that I can have something to look at. And even if it's a crappy picture, even if it's something, it's a memory nonetheless, right? And that can get me thinking about the past or what the difference is between that moment and now and everything else.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I also pull in the weather for today, and I am also waiting for attributes to matter. So here I have my weather. These are all attributes. And so hopefully eventually I can even pull together my journal with the appropriate attributes of what's kind of what the weather is going to be like. And you can tell it's hot today, but it's supposed to be like 103. So that won't be very exciting. I also have my sleep log, and no, I didn't sleep much last night. That's just the way it goes. I have a 1-year-old, and she doesn't let me sleep very often. So my sleep quality, I have a little slider here. Eventually, again, that'll matter. And I have my calendar here. You're on here. This is all pulled automatically. I just press the button, and it all pops out there for me.
That's from that's from your calendar, like your Google Calendar, or like your
my iOS calendar.
Well, like regardless, it's like a calendar app that you fill in, and that ends up here on your daily page. Wow, that's pretty cool.
I pull the data from the calendar through shortcuts, and I could technically show you the shortcut as well, but I don't think we need to necessarily do that. I parse the data how I want it and present it in there. If I had class, my classes would show up here, the times as well as the agenda that I have planned. But I'm not doing class today, so there's nothing there. And then of course I have my daily notes, which I haven't made any daily notes today. I've been just dealing with other stuff, but here's where I put all my fleeting notes, right? Just the thoughts that I have, the kind of daily inbox. And then I have my task management. So this is just my action list. So this is just the things that I'm doing that I've started and should be done soon. One thing that I realized in my prior Roam setup is that it's kind of difficult to have start dates and due dates. Right? Being able to work out the nesting of start date and due date, and to make sure and pull that from a query appropriately was a little too difficult to manage. And honestly, I don't really pay attention. I do an evening review, a daily review anyway. And so I have in my review, it looks at what is scheduled and what is there. And I tag with a button on my MacBook Pro, action, right? And that comes up in my daily list. So I have a lot of grading from my previous semester. I'm working on an article about my Roam setup and everything else. And then I have a current online class at the moment. But what's cool is I don't, how the queries don't quite pull things in. I mean, there is an order, right? But it's an order that I don't want, right? To be worked out, I imagine. So basically, if I have tasks with subtasks, I just tag it with this subtasks tag, and it tells me I have subtasks. And so I can use my drop down, and I can have my subtasks here, but in the query, I have subtasks excluded. So they don't pop up unless you expand the transclusion there. And so all of these, creating my week 4 module, scanning my textbook chapters, they all pop up here. And I like this little line that I have that, kind of points out, hey, here are the things that you need to do. Even though they're not all actionable at the moment, you can
Mm-hmm.
see them there. And then, of course, if it involves a page I'm working on, I have the link to the page, of course.
Well, I was just going to say, very clever your way of excluding subtasks. Essentially, what you're doing here is you're just saying, like, this is what I actually care about having in my attention, because like that I think that's been the part that I've personally been struggling with using queries in conjunction with like task productivity is just the amount of context that shows up, the amount of clutter I think that shows up.
Hmm.
It can be a bit of a struggle, and it seems like you have this like conscious approach set up to remove that clutter.
Yes, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but a gentleman from Slack. He created a little some kind of script. I can't remember what it is, but it's the minimal script to minimize the amount that's in your queries. And I don't use it with this, but it is installed here. So using that tag, it should be installed anyway. Oh,
Matt
no, it's not. I
Goldenberg.
don't have it turned
Matt
on.
Goldenberg. That's the
That's what,
one.
yeah, that's who it is. Yeah, absolutely. I have it turned off on my styles here. There we go. I could do this as well, but for these particular ones, right, I need the context because they're projects. But for like
Mm-hmm.
I do like home tasks, and I have like little personal tasks that I want to have, and I use that, and it works so well. I love that a lot because I've really tried to minimize what is actually being presented, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been not gonna lie, that's been one of my challenges that I'm still working out my answer to this. Like, I've been tweeting about this and thinking about this. Is just like, as you get more and more quantity, how do you go about making sure that you're still just most likely to see the most important things quickly? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
because I see people post and say all the time, like, Rome, it gets more valuable the more you put into it. But at the same time, I don't think that's fully true. I think that point just comes much later in the experience when you start to experience entropy, and things kind of falling apart.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think, but like it seems like you have some strategies set up in place to help you handle the amount of quantity, I guess, that you have in here.
Well, and you remember, we had a conversation a while ago about how, Rome is, of course, billed as this non-hierarchical network of
Mm-hmm.
thought, right? And basically, not necessarily a criticism, but a point I wanted to emphasize was that although it is structured non-hierarchical, our brains don't operate without hierarchy.
Yeah.
Our lives don't operate without hierarchy. So we need to be able to have a strategy to be able to impose on some of it, right? I mean, if you're just playing in your thought playground, right, you don't want necessarily hierarchy. You want to explore, you want to have fun. But if you're trying to work on something, you need to be able to establish very clearly the parameters, right? The kind of guardrails
Mm-hmm.
that you're operating under. And if you allow it, just like the criticism of files and folders, if you allow the structure itself to determine your work, and if there is no structure, then you're really just not operating very efficiently, right? You're trying to
Mm-hmm.
make all these connections, but you're just searching forever for everything, and it's just at that point kind of extremely inefficient and extremely discouraging.
Right. Right. So I mean, like, what are some areas where you've needed to impose some structure on the notes, the writing, et cetera, that you put into here beyond, I'd say, like to do type productivity, where it's like it's very clear that you need some sort of structure for like to do type productivity. But like I'm curious what some of the
Sure.
other areas where you've had to impose structure are?
So like I said, the other two kind of areas at which I utilize Rome,
Mm-hmm.
in my teaching as well as in my just thinking and writing. On my teaching side, I also need a significant amount of structure, right? I need to plan my classes. I need to plan the curriculum. I need to
Mm-hmm.
plan, I teach online as well. And so I need to plan out the assignment descriptions and all of this other stuff. In my traditional classroom, I don't really have much structure built in at all. I almost do everything verbally and or digitally on a whiteboard, right? A digital whiteboard. And so, in regards to my teaching, if I go here to my areas area, I hijacked the Kanban board
Mm-hmm.
for
Oh,
my own
wow.
visual pleasure. Because I do use Kanban. I have it on my project page. So if I go to projects, then that's here as a traditional Kanban, right? On deck, doing, ongoing, and done. But
Uh-huh.
I also it honestly, the tables are rudimentary at this point, and
Right.
I do like to be able to have a matrix, right, of information established. So this is me imposing my structure onto my Rome. And so in my courses, these are all the varieties of courses that I'm teaching right now. And since I don't need to write out modern American history or modern world history or California history or early American history or early world history, I just have acronyms here. And then I have course assignments and modules. This is for the LMS, the learning management system I have. And then I just have some other stuff here and then some home stuff. But although it's still somewhat chaotic, if I was to go into my modules, for example, here I need to have a certain set of pages that I need to replicate every time I do the course, right? I have to take the text and put it in. It's actually quicker to do it that way than migrate it from earlier. So I have a collection here. I don't have too much at this moment, but I had just taught modern American history, and so here I have these introductions that I want to have really easily. If I
With
go to
with
course
those
assignments,
with
sorry,
those
go
things that
ahead.
are like sort of repeated like that, how are you doing? How are you repeating them? Are you copy paste repeating the text? Are you using block references to basically form templates for yourself? Like, what's going on there?
Okay, so if I'm going to replicate it in Rome, I will always use a block reference.
Mm-hmm.
Only because for me, I change every semester I teach, I change whatever I believe needs to be changed. I don't think I have my changed list in here yet. No, I don't. I have it in my task management. Well, we don't need to read that. I have it in my other system, but basically I create a log every time I reflect after every class period, and I think, what didn't go so well at that moment, and I'll start a to-do list, and that long list will need to be implemented. And so if previous note systems, this is where transclusion really came into clarity for me. I would have to find all the representations of that exact set of text, right?
Mm,
Directions for an assignment, or how a how-to guide or an FAQ guide for a student, or students or the class or whatever. But now I can just block reference that and be able to edit it or at least get to it wherever I'm going to refer to it, so that I can easily make a word change and not have to go through every instance to
mm,
change one word. That word could matter the difference between half the class being utterly confused, right? To everyone getting total clarity. And that could just be one word.
mm-hmm.
And so I want to make sure that as much as I can use transclusion in those ways. Now, I believe, I don't know. I don't know where I have a spot. I didn't plan on talking about that, but
Don't
where
it,
I
I can cut
sometimes,
this out if I can cut this out if we can't find anything. Don't worry.
but basically, I want to ensure through transclusion that I don't have to make multiple edits in multiple places. That's why once Rome is not only public ready, but multiplayer ready, as Connor likes to say, right? Then I am moving off my LMS entirely. And I'm going to do everything in Rome.
Hmm.
Currently, I have it split between Notion and my LMS because Notion is, it can deal with a lot of users all at once at this moment, but it's horrendously designed for someone who didn't design it, right?
Mm.
Like if I go into my Notion, I know where everything is, I know how to manipulate it. But for me and for my students, I want to make sure that they can traverse through the information easily.
Yeah.
Notion doesn't quite do it yet in the ways that I want it. It's a
I
great
was
piece of software, but it's not quite ready for that.
I'm wondering
So
if you could show
I
us.
am basically I impose here's a
Mhm.
more well developed one. So this is a fully fleshed out course more or less, and this is just my California history course. And I want to make sure, for example, I keep track of what courses I'm teaching at the moment. And this
Mhm.
big dot is referring to an area. So all my pages that are referencing kind of top level areas have this dot. And a kind of subdomain of an area is this kind of what I continue to remind myself is like looks like the X-Men symbol, but it just happens to be there. I don't like using too many emojis. I like the icon to change color when appropriate, and so I use the kind of Unicode uh,
Mm.
uh, text instead. But here I have basically my teaching philosophy is behind these, right? Here I have references to how the history of history, historiography is the study of how a topic has been written about in the past. And so I have topics and discussions regarding how California history has been represented in the past, as well as some kind of teaching philosophy things here that I have linked to there. But then I have my curriculum, my textbook, and other elements of the course that I would want to go to make sure that I cover. And I want to have notes on all of that. I also have my lectures because when I teach online, I it's hard to do a Socratic dialogue, right?
Mm.
A back and forth dialogue through text or even through Zoom. It kind of makes it a little bit more difficult. And most online students want asynchronous instruction, right? They don't necessarily want to meet at the same time every day or the same time every week, and so I have to lecture or provide content in some way, even though I despise it. But here we are. I think there's more valuable ways to get content, not
Mhm.
from me talking. And then this, the Mac command symbol, right? This is all the LMS pages, right? The directions that I have to kind of copy and paste. And right now I'm teaching a 7-week course. Normally I teach a 15-week course, and there's some elements that I post there, and some other elements here. Oh, here's the template for my critical reflection journal,
Mm.
and that references the template, which is somewhere else. And so that's one way that I'll do it.
Oh, and so
Similarly,
those
when
are
I
all
am
block
teaching,
references. That's what those circles
correct.
at the at
So
the
I
circles at
stole,
yeah.
yeah,
Or go for
I
it.
took that idea from oh, I can't remember her name at the moment. I'm
Maggie
horrible with
Appleton.
names.
Maggie
Yes,
Appleton.
yes.
Yeah.
We had a conversation a while ago about this. How we could color the page links and the like. And once I saw her theme, I liked it a lot. And the one thing that really I really did enjoy was the dot, right? That
Mm.
she put instead of the underlining for the block references. I like that a lot, particularly because I do a lot of that in like a lecture or something like that. And it's nice to have a different visual cue. But I also, I ask these larger questions. And I do project-based learning where students basically are in charge of where they, how they consume the content, how they traverse the past. And so I ask these very large questions, such as this, right? You know, what do historians do? What is history? And the entire class is built on those questions. But I remix them differently depending on how long the course is, right? If it's a 15-week long course, I'm going to ask different questions. And so in my 7-week long course, I have it remixed in a different way, right? So I have, maybe I take a little bit from here, a little bit from here, and mash it up differently. And so in this way, I can kind of keep track, instead of logging into my LMS, which ones am I using right now, right? Which ones are important? And
Wait,
I
so
also,
so do those
have my
all
handouts.
so do those all go back to I noticed that they're all block references. So does that mean these are all coming from one giant like questions source page, or?
It kind of. So technically, it's just, in this case, it's right above. For my Canvas pages, like up here, my LMS pages, those are somewhere else entirely because they're independent of class, right? So whether I'm teaching California history or American history or world history, the assignments are the same. The content's just different. But here, this is content specific. So I have here in my 15-week version, these are all the questions. Technically not all of them, but the ones I'm using at the moment. And then when it's a shorter course, I'm just referencing these above. So I colored my references over here so I can see really clearly, hey, I'm referencing that somewhere else, but that's these. So they're just pulling from above.
Wow, this has all been really cool. Is there anything else that you want to like show off before we get going?
Yeah, maybe one little thing.
Sweet.
I am working on interacting with myself while I write, but in a way that allows me to not clutter up the text too much. So what was I last working on? I was working on, well, I have my article that I'm working on at the moment, of which I have a little inbox here. Oh, I can show that real quick. Okay, I have to show that. In my inbox tab, I have a collection of inboxes here just for random things. So if I want to quickly just drop something onto a page, I can open this up and here's a query to all my project inboxes. And I could just quickly enter in a little task real quick and move on, right? That's wonderful. I love that. But here I have, you know, my tasks that I'm trying to establish and address, my inbox. But here, I have little markers that I'm presenting in different places, right? To kind of give almost an annotation, a argumentative annotation in a way, to try and make sure that I know what I'm doing without having to reread it. And I don't like writing in an outline. I don't know if you know what I mean, but I don't necessarily want to have, for example, this little component as some separate bullet point and then right under it. I want it to be in line so that I can kind of reference it, but don't let it screw up the kind of paragraph structure, right? And so I've tried to present some writing conventions. Oh, I think I froze for a second there. And things I want to include, right? Problem, use case. I want to include a screenshot here. Here's where I talk about Rome advantages, right? And so what this will do for me later on is, let's see, I think, yeah, I can go, if I was to click on, and this is for me to become a better writer. If I'm going to click on introduction here, I've only been doing this for a little bit, but here is where I introduce this topic. And this way I can kind of understand my writing style and how I introduce topics and how I cover context. And so I can have a quick little look at my writing and my writing style, so I can evaluate as I'm going through my writing as a skill.
Mm. So you can see like, okay, here's all the past intros that I've written
Yeah.
for any article. If you're like, which could be really helpful also, like if you're stuck on an intro for an article. Like I know for me, intros are
Yes.
generally one of the harder parts, you know, which
As
has
you should
been,
write it last.
yeah. So that's always been the hardest part for me. So like that's been part of what I like about, you know, my public roam is it's kind of like I don't really need to write intros. I'm just kind of talking about the concepts at a little bit more of like a concept rather than an article level, which is a whole different sort of writing, you know. And I think that your way of like just quickly giving yourself glances through the document, like it seems like that's even going to help you um at the time when you're transitioning this over to an article, that's going to be helpful.
Hmm.
I like also that you're writing it like this. Like I don't know about you. I think I understand what you mean when you say you don't like outline writing. Because I mean for me, I've started falling very deeply into outline writing, you know, and I'm curious to see to what degree people understand it and are and have it be readable, you know, in the
Hmm.
same way that people are used to reading like paragraph type things. But like I really
Yeah.
like the idea of being able to express through the structure, you know, of my of the way that I write what I mean, and be able to say these are the ideas that build on this, and you can
Yeah.
tell just by looking at the indentation. But at the same time, that's just not what people are used to reading, and it's not as pretty, you know? So it's like being able to see these annotations, I think is really cool.
I think it's if you know, now that I think about it, it might be best presented as this is my outline in line, as opposed to as an indented section.
Mm,
So if here you can see I have above, these were my initial outline, right? And that's a traditional outline. Then
mhm.
I rethought about it again. And I was like, you know, no, I want to do it a little bit differently. And so I did that. And then I was like, nah, don't like that one. But I don't want to get rid of any of them, because that would be ridiculous to get rid of your prior thoughts. That's just, I mean, some things you want to forget,
Who
but you
does
know what I
that?
mean.
Who does that?
So I have a 3.0, right? And here's my third version.
Mm,
And this is what I opened in the sidebar to have my outline on the right. And then I can write my narrative here. And I also stole, I believe this was Connor's, you know, the founder, his kind of mechanic, right? Where he has a choice and options. I added thinking here because I want to think about a couple things. You know, I want to have my thoughts in line, but I can just collapse that and say, you know what, this lower section here that I'm writing right now, I'm asking, do I want this to even be a part of the article at all?
mm,
Right. And I'm like, well, why, you know, yes, it's going to be, or no, it's not going to be. What are the advantages here? Disadvantages? What decision am I going to make here? And I'll be able to collapse that. But I do believe that this portion of it and these little annotations with the push pins, these are for writing, not logic.
mm,
Right? The logic has already been established, and so now this is stylistic. And so I need to keep the logic and the style separate, because if
mm.
I blend them together too much, I inevitably lose the style. I lose the story. And
Right.
what I'm trying to do is to blend them effectively together.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
So,
think that just again it gets at this nature of linear writing is different from nonlinear writing. You
oh yeah.
know, it's an entirely different game to write one article that covers five ideas than it is to write 5 separate pages or 5 separate bullet hierarchies and like connect
Hmm.
them appropriately. You know, two entirely different games.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that I think about it, I just last little thing, and we don't have to spend too much time on it because I'm
Uh,
not done with it.
oh, this is going to be a two-parter, for sure.